here K2 divided by E2. Okay? So what that number is telling me is there's 8/100ths of a crime per person in Lisbon. Can anybody write a lead of a news story talking about 8/100ths of a crime per person? Of course not. You know, that's ridiculous. You can't even think of something like that. And that's in fact why we change it. We multiply it by something until even the smallest rate is more than 1. And that's why I'm pretty sure 1,000 will work pretty well here. So I'm going to go back into our formula and just multiply times 1,000. Okay. So now what we have is, and let's actually make this look a little tighter too. Okay. So we have 85.6, or let's just round it completely off. There's about 86 crimes for every 1,000 people in Lisbon. Okay? Now, what we want to know is Lisbon worse or better than other places? So let's copy this down. Once again, I put the little tiny black cross there, double click, and good news, it's different. They vary. If they were all the same, it would be boring. You know, if every city it was 85, there wouldn't be a story there. But clearly there is a difference. So what we want to do now is what? Who said sort? Somebody said sort. Exactly right. Okay. That's what we want to do. Because once again, we want the worst up at the top and the best down at the bottom. Because we like to focus, you know, we're journalists. We focus on the worst. So I'm going to put my cursor here. I'm going to put it in descending order. And where are we at? Albufeira has the, whoops, let's make this a little smaller here. Where's my view? Zoom, let's go back to 100%. So we see everything. Okay, way worse than every place else. 138 crimes per 1,000 people in Albufeira. Why is this? Why is Albufeira such a hellhole?
Tourists.
Tourists, right. There's drunken British tourists there to be robbed. Okay, right. It's the Algarve. That's where everybody is. Everybody is there. In fact, it looks even worse than it actually is because it's tourists. Are they counted in the population? No. Tourists are not counted as part of the population. They're the ones the crime is happening to. You know, they're coming out of the bars at 2 in the morning and they're drunk and they're getting robbed and so on, but they're not counted as the population. So it makes it seem even worse. I told this story to the Senjor people, and I probably told you this last year, Eudora. In Miami, when I lived in Miami, where we had a huge crime problem. In fact, back when I was there, Miami was the murder capital of the United States. We were having murders like every day. We had, you know, it's about 360 murders one year. You know, just constantly, you know, shootouts and bodies being found in the street and so on. And so I was writing stories about, you know, all the crime that was happening and how high the crime rate was and the murder rate in Miami. And we got a call from the, you know, it's basically the tourist board of Miami saying, you know, you're making us look bad and it's really not that bad because we have so many tourists here and you should be counting them. And I thought, you know, you're right. And so I did some research. I looked at, you know, the number of hotel rooms are in Miami and the average occupancy rate and the number of people that go through the airport and the number that go to the cruise ships and all this kind of stuff. And I calculated that on any given day in Miami, there was actually about an extra 200,000 people in Miami that weren't being counted in the population. So I added 200,000 to the population, I recalculated the crime rate, and we were still #1. So it just goes to show. We were really bad that year. But anyway, that's a fair thing to do, you know, to at least count for it. But right here, we're looking at, you know, there's journalism in here. We see a real difference between places. And also, I happen to look and see up here, right near the top, actually Lisbon is problematic. It has one of the highest crime rates in the Lisbon. Not only numbers, but rate. Same thing with Porto, also right up at the top. Let's do one other thing that might be interesting. The mix of crime always interests me. You know, violent crime versus kind of property crime. You know, a city where the crime is, what is it, crimes against patrimony is like what, graffiti and things like that. I'm not sure what all the differences are here, but there's some crimes that don't bother me as much as the chance of being held up by gun or knife or whatever. So let's do the crime mix. I want to know the percentage of all these crimes that are actually crimes against person. So we're going to do crimes against persons percent. Okay, so again, a formula equals the number of crimes against persons divided by the total number of crimes. And I'm going to turn that to a percent. So in Albufera, where we are so concerned about, let's make this a little smaller so we can see it. And hold on a second, tighten these up. Okay. In Albufera, 12% of the crimes. About 1 out of every 8 crimes is a crime against person. Let's see if this varies. If it does, then that can be interesting. So I put that there, double click. There does seem to be variation. It's good when variables vary because you can find stories there. So now I'm going to sort once again in descending order. And wow, here's it looks pretty exciting when you look over here. 2/3 of the crimes are crimes against person. 12 crimes. I mean, let's face it, I'm not going to worry so much if I'm in Montfort. Anybody here from Montforte? I don't know what. Okay. Obviously not many people at all there. Yeah, this is an example of one of the problems of something like this. If it's too small, you can get really sort of big changes. So what you might actually want to do is say, let's only look at cities above a certain size. Let's say there has to be cities that have at least, 5,000 people. Okay? So, or make sure, let's even do this. Let's do cities with at least 10,000 people. It should be a more interesting thing. To do that, we want to do something called filtering. I want to put out of my sight all the cities that are smaller than that. So I'm going to do this tool. I'm going to go under Data, Dados, and go down to Filter, click on that, and see these buttons appear? The buttons are how you do the filtering. And I'm going to go over here to Population, click on that button, and it gives me some choices. I can either select actual individual things, or better, I can do this. I can say where the population is greater than or equal to, what did I say, 10,000? Okay. Now I put this away, and now the only thing that is there are cities that are at least 10,000. And so now I can see that, and again, in actually fairly large cities, this city here, Piso de Regua, has, almost half the crimes that occur there are actually crimes against people. Is this a tourist area? Is this, what's the?
It's a wine area.
A wine area, okay, well, there's a reason there. I should add, this is something important about this kind of journalism. This journalism will tell you what is happening. It'll show you where interesting things are happening and so on. What it doesn't answer is why. Data never tells you why something is happening. To find out why, you have to go do the same kind of reporting that you already know how to do. But if I was a reporter and I'm looking at this list, I'm saying, I got to find out why it's so bad there. What's the story? What is the story behind this? And I would go there and I would perhaps talk to the police officers and other people that would actually understand the mix of crime that they deal with. So again, computer-assisted reporting is great for helping you find the story, but to find the answer to the story, the reason why, you have to do what you already know how to do. Let's look at the other end also. I mean, it's always interesting to see the best places as well. Yeah, back it out. Actually, very low crimes against persons. So it must be thefts and things like that that are happening there. So even though they have a high crime rate, it's really not the tourists, I guess, getting held up there. It's probably cars being stolen and other things like that. But I don't know. Again, you would have to go do reporting there to find that out. Okay. So you've seen how quickly you can take some data and get it to very quickly answer some questions for you. Let's do one other thing. Go back down to the bottom. We don't, you know, we have the total crimes in Portugal, the total population, but we might want to know the crime rates and crimes against persons for the country as a whole. So I'm going to copy those two formulas down. And we see that the national crime rate is 39 crimes per person. Okay? So places that are above that are above normal, and below that are below normal, and so on. So anyway, very quickly we have been able to do those kinds of things. Let's look at one other thing we might want to do. I'm going to take, let me turn off the filter here. Let's say what we want to know, instead of these individual ones, we want to actually know which of the subregions have the most crimes and the least crimes and things like that. Okay? So one thing you could do is you could sort by that. So all the Alentejo Central, and then Litoral, and then Algarve, and so on are all together. And then you could go find a place where you could write a whole bunch of those sum functions. So you could do sum of, let's say, crimes against person, F2 to F, whatever it is, 14. And then write another one for the next one, and so on. It would take a while to do that. Pardon me. But Excel has a way to make that easier too, and it's called pivot tables. Or a tabelas dinâmica in the Portuguese version. I happen to remember that. Okay, so let me show you what a pivot table can do. We go under Data, go down to Pivot Table. It says choose the data you want to analyze. Well, this is the data we want, so we just tell it OK. It goes over to a new worksheet. We still have our data. It's still sitting right over here, back on this thing. But we go to this worksheet. And here is where we basically create the piece of paper that would answer our question. Well, our question is, what's the total number of crimes against persons in each of the sub-regions, each of the NUTS 2 regions, I guess those are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take sub-region, and I'm going to put it down here where it says row labels. So now we have one row for each of those sub-regions. And then I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to, oh, here it is, crimes against persons. And I'm going to put that in value.